Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Good meditation.
I'm halfway through a really strong itch under my left eye, and the urge to scratch it. And what I did was just work with it. What I did was go right into breath, and go back to like basics, and it just passed. As a matter of fact, I don't even remember when the itch stopped. It was an interesting experience.
Thank you. I had a right eye itch
today. A right eye itch.
Good relate. Yeah.
I found your suggestion to let the mind unfurl useful, because during the course of the meditation, I would watch my mind sort of wanting to close up like a bud, become more contracted. And so I used that image of unfurling to try and relax the mind.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's possible to have a perfectly relaxed body and a contracted mind. It's interesting.
It's a great metaphor, a great image of the unfurling.
Yeah. Like a flag. It's waving freely. Anybody have monkey mind? Thank you for being honest about monkey mind. So, all the stuff's going on when we're sitting here quiet. I think it's useful for me to hear a little bit of feedback and to know that I'm not the only imperfect meditator here. So at this point in our program, we go around and introduce ourselves. Is there anyone here today for the first time or been away for a while? Hi, welcome. Welcome. We have a little social half hour after the program ends, so I hope you can hang around and meet some of the members of the Sangha. So we go around the room and just introduce ourselves, give our names at this point. My name is David Lewis.
Douglas.
Chris.
My name is Gary.
Manuel. My name is Manuel.
I'm Philip.
My name is Kay.
I'm George.
I'm Cass.
I'm Lee.
Gary.
I'm Jerry.
I'm Brian.
I'm Don. Teddy. Harvey.
John.
My name is Jerry.
Jeffy.
Jack. Well, my name is Harley.
My name is Richard.
Is anybody?
Yeah. My name is Michael.
My name is Howard DePort.
My name is Michael.
My name is Rob.
Missed a whole row. Well, welcome. It's great to see everybody this long weekend morning. Today we're doing inspirational readings, so I hope a few of you brought things. I would encourage the rest of us, when we're not reading, to meditate while you're listening. One of the definitions of meditation is being intimate with all things. So there's no reason why we can't meditate when we're doing the dishes, walking down the street, taking a pee. Anything we're doing during our day we can do fully present with that activity, and it's meditating, even if you're not sitting down. So it's possible to listen and meditate, and sometimes surprising things come up. So would anyone like to share?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I was thinking, could we consider perhaps sitting in a circle if everybody's going to sort of one?
Sure. Would you guys like to get in a circle, more or less? Good idea. Thanks.
And people on chairs can remain on chairs.
Who has a reading to start? You're looking ready for our... Would you like to start?
Well, anyone else prefer to? Everybody starts out living in a fragmented, broken, dualistic, brutalized state. The world is divided into subject versus object, self versus other, me in here versus the world out there. Once the world is broken in two, the world knows only pain, suffering, torment, terror. In the gap between subject and object lies the entire misery of humankind. That's the gap between seer and the seen, Jones softly adds. Yes. So you can find the ultimate source of oneness, of cosmic consciousness, or radiant love, by going through the seer or the seen, since they both end up coming together as one. Men generally find it easier to pursue the seer. Women generally find it easier to go through the seen. But men and women can do both. It's just a matter of personal choice. I don't understand a single word you said. It's not that hard. Young Ken, honest. Let us start with the seer and follow me just one more time, because you have heard these words before, haven't you? Let your mind relax and expand, mixing with the sky in front of us. Then notice the clouds float by in the sky, and you are effortlessly aware of them. Feelings float by in the body, and you are effortlessly aware of them too. Thoughts float by in the mind, and you are aware of them as well. Nature floats by. Feelings float by. Thoughts float by. And you are aware of all of them. So tell me, who are you? You are not your thoughts. You are aware of them. You are not your feelings, for you are aware of them. You are not any objects that you can see, for you are aware of them too. Something in you is aware of all these things. So tell me, what is it in you is always awake, always fully present? Something in you right now is effortlessly noticing everything that arises. What is that? That vast, infinite, witnessing awareness. Don't you recognize it? What is that witness? You are that witness, aren't you? You are the pure seer, pure awareness, that pure spirit that impartially witnesses everything that arises, moment to moment. Your awareness is spacious, wide open, empty and clear. And yet it registers everything that arises. That very witness is God within, looking out on the world that it created. That's Ken over.
Thank you. Someone else?
I have a couple of short ones, and we have time, a little parable that relates to the Sanghas, in my opinion. First one is called Living in the World. The Dharma of the Buddha does not require a person to go into homelessness or to resign from the world unless he or she feels called upon to do so. But the Dharma of the Buddha requires every person to free themselves from the illusion of self, to cleanse one's heart, to give up one's thirst for pleasure, and lead a life of righteousness. And whatever people do, whether they remain in the world as artisans, merchants, or officers of the king, or retire from the world and devote themselves to a life of religious meditation, let them put their whole heart into their task. Let them be diligent and energetic. And if, like the lotus flower which grows out of muddy water but remains untouched by the mud, they engage in life without cherishing envy or hatred, and if they live in the world not a life of self, but a life of truth, then surely joy, peace, and bliss will dwell in their minds. This one is called Crossing the Stream. Few cross over the river, most are stranded on the side. On the riverbank, they run up and down, but the wise person following the way crosses over beyond the reach of death, free from desire, free from possessions, free from attachment and appetite, following the seven lights of awakening, and rejoicing greatly in one's freedom. In this world, the wise person becomes oneself a light, pure, shining, and free. And this is the story. It's about geese and why they fly. This fall, when you see geese heading south for the winter, flying along a V formation, you might be interested in knowing what science has discovered about why they fly that way. It has been learned that as each bird flaps its wings, it creates an uplift for the bird immediately following. By flying in a V formation, the whole flock adds at least 71% greater flying range than if each bird flew on its own. People who share a common direction and sense of community can get where they are going quicker and easier because they are traveling on the thrust of one another. When a goose falls out of formation, it suddenly feels the drag and resistance of trying to go it alone, and quickly gets back into formation to take advantage of the lifting power of the bird immediately in front. When the lead goose gets tired, he rotates back in the wing, and another goose flies point. The geese honk from behind to encourage those up front to keep up their speed. Finally, when a goose gets sick or is wounded by a gunshot and falls out, two geese fall out of formation and follow it down to help and protect it. They stay with the goose until it is either able to fly or it is dead. They then launch out on their own or with another formation to catch up with their group. If we have the sense of a goose, we will stand by one another like that.
it's actually a couple of short things. It's from Charles Ludlam, who's the founder of the Ridiculous Theater, because to me theater is a form of spirituality, which isn't surprising since, I guess, Western theater originated in the festivals of Dionysus. So here's a maxim that he has about the nature of theater, and I think it applies to other forms of human activity. Theater is the supreme art. It's life itself. You give people 2 hours of your life on stage. Time is all we have, and sharing that with people is different from just creating an object. It gives people a sense of time, that life begins and life ends. It gives an intensification of life for several hours, heightened experience, or a much more distilled experience than perhaps you could get just by sitting around and having a cup of coffee. Something you can't get from the bodily functions. You can't get it from sex, you can't get it from food, you can't get it from breathing, you can only get it from the theater. And he had a manifesto for the theater he founded in 1967. And this is from the manifesto. If one is not a living mockery of one's own ideals, one has set one's ideals too low. The things one takes seriously are one's weaknesses. Just as many people who claim a belief in God disprove it with their every act, so too there are those whose every deed, though they say there is no God, is an act of faith. Evolution is a conscious process. And because spirituality, in theory, is only half the picture, and it has to be put into practice. This is from my putting it in practice, which was when I participated with the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, and this was our holy card that we handed out to people. We are an order of gay male nuns dedicated to the promulgation of universal joy and the expiation of stigmatic guilt. Our ministry is one of public manifestation and habitual perpetration. For further information, call Sister Solicitation. 202. So anyway, I still try to live by that ideal.
I've got a paragraph I want to read. It's from I thought a really terrific book on mindfulness and meditation called The Mindful Way Through Depression. The tragedy for too many of us is not that our lives are too short, but that we take so long before we start to live them. The source of wisdom we discover from the practice of mindfulness, if we allow it, will eventually show us the immense and tragic suffering that stems from unawareness. It will allow us to see, to dwell in, and to treasure the deep peace that lies at the heart of each moment if we have the courage to cultivate awareness, here and now. It will allow us to experience being fully alive, here and now, while we have the chance.
That's beautiful. If anybody has a comment on one of these readings, or if it brings something up for you, feel free to. Or offer another reading. Okay.
This is from the book called 365 Zen, and this is sort of like a Zen's greatest hits, at least according to this editor. And there are many stories, and one of the things about Zen tradition is that they tend to try to pass on the teaching in the form of the stories. And this one came from Zen master Kosho Uchiyama, and the book from which this quote came from is titled Opening the Hand of Thoughts. And this is a squash story, and it goes like this. The following story comes from the Edo period in Japan, 1600 through 1868. Behind the temple, there was a field where there were many squashes growing on the vine. One day, a fight broke out among them, and the squashes split up into two groups and made a big racket, shouting at one another. The head priest heard the uproar and, going out to see what was going on, found the squashes quarreling. In his own booming voice, the priest scolded them. "Hey, squashes, what are you doing out there fighting? Everyone do zazen." The priest taught them how to do zazen. "Fold your legs like this, sit up, and straighten your back and neck." While the squashes were sitting zazen in the way the priest had taught them, their anger subsided and they settled down. Then the priest quietly said, "Everyone put your hand on top of your head." Then the squashes felt the top of their head. They found some weird thing attached there. It turned out to be a vine that connected them all together. This is very strange. Here we been arguing when actually we all tied together and living just one life. What a mistake. It's just as the priest said. After that, the squashes all got along with each other quite well.
I didn't bring this along as a reading, but if I may share it from, I've been attending the sittings and classes of Sylvia Borstein at Spirit Rock for the last few weeks, and she actually twice, it was a couple of weeks ago, and then last time she read a little story from a newspaper, which I want to share. I didn't bring it with me, and then share a couple of interpretations about it. It was a story about the subway in New York, in which there was a musician playing in the subway, playing a violin. And so it was a report about an hour of his playing. He spent an hour playing, and during that time, I don't remember the exact numbers, but 3 people stopped to listen for a few minutes. 20 people gave some money. There were half a dozen small children that tried to stop and listen, a few years old, but their parents tugged them away. And so that was the experience. The other part of the story is that the musician who was playing the violin was Joshua Bell, which a number of people may recognize. If you're older, you may think of Yehudi Menuhin as similar, who the week before had sold out a concert at one of the major concert halls for $100 a seat. People were not able to get tickets that wanted to. And he was playing one of the most intricate pieces ever written for the violin on a Stradivarius violin valued at $3.5 million. So there are several interpretations, and the one that Sylvia had started out with, she had started out with some other things about the joy of life. So one interpretation is, we're not paying attention, and we should pay more attention to these unusual and wondrous experiences. And 2 other interpretations occurred to me, one of which was rather pessimistic, and which I gave first, and not surprisingly, the crowd started, but it was the third one also. So the second one was, well, maybe Joshua Bell isn't really so wonderful. Or it's $3.5 million Stradivarius, and people are just there because it's good marketing, and they've been sold a package. So that was sort of the negative interpretation. But the other one that I think is interesting is that maybe the ordinary experiences we have in life are just as wonderful. The background music on the car radio that we don't notice, the flowers over here that we pay no attention to, but we go and look at the prize orchids in the show because they won a prize, or we wait to go to the French Laundry or Chez Panisse and don't pay any attention to or very little to the complexity of the peach that we're eating, which is perhaps far more complex and interesting. So the message that I think that one can take is that every moment has the potential for the same joy as going to the Philharmonic and hearing Joshua Bell.
I have what's called the invitation. It doesn't interest me what you do for a living. I want to know what you ache for. And if you dare to dream of meeting your heart's longing. It doesn't interest me how old you are. I want to know if you'll risk looking like a fool for love, for your dreams, for the adventures of being alive. It doesn't interest me what planets are squaring your moon. I want to know if you've touched the center of your sorrow, if you've been opened by life's betrayals, or have become shriveled and closed from the fear of further pain. I want to know if you can sit with pain, mine or your own, without moving to hide it, or fade it, or fix it. I want to know if you can be with joy, mine or your own. If you can dance with wildness and let the ecstasy fill you, the tips of your fingers and toes without cautioning us to be careful, be realistic, or remember the limitations of being human. It doesn't interest me if the story you're telling me is true. I want to know if you can disappoint another to be true to yourself, if you can bear the accusation of betrayal and not betray your own soul. I want to know if you can be faithful and therefore be trustworthy. I want to know if you can see beauty even when it's not a very pretty day. And if you can source your life from God's presence. I want to know if you can live with failure, yours and mine, and still stand on the edge of a lake and shout at the silver moon, yes. It doesn't interest me to know where you live, or how much money you have. I want to know if you can get up after a night of grief and despair, worry and bruise to the bone, and do what needs to be done for the children. It doesn't interest me who you are and how you came to be here. I want to know if you will stand at the center of the fire with me and not shrink back. It doesn't interest me where or what or with whom you have studied. I want to know what sustains you from the inside when all else falls away. I want to know if you can be alone with yourself and if you truly like the company you keep in the empty moments. And this is from Oriah Mountain Dreamer, an Indian elder.
Going to make a great personal ad.
But you can practice it.
Don?
My quote is very short. It's 3 verses from Dhammapada, and to me, I think this is sort of a recipe for equanimity. It's verses 3, 4, and 5 begin. He abused me, he beat me, he defeated me, he robbed me. In those who harbor such thoughts, hatred will never cease. He abused me, he beat me, he defeated me, he robbed me. In those who do not harbor such thoughts, hatred will cease. For hatred does not cease by hatred at any time. Hatred ceases by love. This is an old rule.
I'd like to follow that. This seems appropriate. comes from an anonymous source on the net. And it is called Kuan Yin's Prayer for the Abuser. To those who withhold refuge, I cradle you in safety at the core of my being. To those that cause a child to cry out, I grant you the freedom to express your own choked agony. To those that inflict terror, I remind you that you shine with the purity of 1,000 suns. To those who would confine, suppress, or deny, I offer the limitless expanse of the sky. To those who need to cut, slash, or burn, I remind you of the invincibility of spring. To those who cling and grasp, I promise more abundance than you could ever hold on to. To those who vent their rage on small children, I return to you your deepest innocence. To those who must frighten into submission, I hold you in the bosom of your original mother. To those who cause agony to others, I give the gift of free-flowing tears. To those that deny another's right to be, I remind you that the angels sang in celebration of you on the day of your birth. To those who see only division and separateness, I remind you that a part is born only by dissecting a whole. For those who have forgotten the tender mercy of a mother's embrace, I send a gentle breeze to caress your brow. To those who still somehow feel incomplete, I offer the perfect sanctity of this very moment.
One of the things that has been working me has been the shift from perceiving and living life in a dualistic mindset and making the shift to perceiving and living life as a unified whole, connected to all sentient beings. Really grateful for Ken Wilber's insights on that. And it's what I appreciate about Buddhism in my life is the shift of habit of mind, the disciplines that help me shift old habits into new ways. And one of the real old habits that work me is the good boy versus bad boy. And always wrestling with mostly the bad boy. And really want to eliminate that. So I'm always struggling with doing things right, whatever that means. And one of the teachings that's been helpful for me is that there are no problems, only adventures. There are no problems, only adventures, and it opens my mind to stepping into my reality as an adventurer, a seeker, a learner, a child, very much trying to explore and deepen. And in that movement, I find greater and greater freedom to for lack of a better term, make mistakes, to step into the mistakes, as a teacher for deepening in the unity of all things. So Carl Jung has been a helpful resource for me. And this is one of the quotes that keeps me in the line of being an adventurer, a risk taker, someone who's willing to openly and sincerely make mistakes for the sake of deepening. This is his thought. But when one follows the path of individuation, when one lives one's own life, one must take mistakes into the bargain. Life would not be complete without them. There is no guarantee, not for a single moment, that we will not fall into error or stumble into deadly peril. We may think there is a sure road, but that would be the road of death. It really helps me to be just settled in the moment and move with the energies and the voices and the consciousness that I engage.
The Buddha had some teachings about guilt, and I don't have them with me, but I think I could kind of summarize. So brought up for me was the Buddha taught that guilt was a very unskillful emotion and doesn't really resolve anything or get you any place. And he taught that remorse was okay, that if you make a mistake, to have some remorse and recognize you did something wrong or you did something unskillfully. It was okay as long as you learn something from that, and therefore were likely to not do it again because you realize that you either caused somebody else suffering or you caused yourself suffering, and that's uncomfortable. So remorse is okay, but because it's likely to change your behavior. And of course that we all make mistakes all the time, but that guilt was really very unskillful. And I wish I had some of the suttas teaching about, how much suffering people cause themselves, additional suffering beyond mistake, suffering that people cause themselves by feeling guilty about whatever it was. So, as usual, Carl Jung and Buddha seem to be in cohesion. Thank you.
I mean, the Dharma and guilt would be a great topic to explore.
Yeah.
I'd like to read two short pieces from Teacher and Disciple on the subject of sitting meditation. Teacher, meditation is the continual act of making friends with yourself. Then, having made friends with yourself, you cannot just contain that friendship within you. You must have some outlet, which is your relationship with the world, compassion with the world. And then the disciple. Sitting meditation cultivates loving kindness and compassion, the relative qualities of bodhicitta. It gives us a way to move closer to our thoughts and emotions and to get in touch with our bodies. It is a method of cultivating unconditional friendliness toward ourselves and for parting the curtain of indifference that distances us from the suffering of others. It is our vehicle for learning to be a truly loving person. Chogyam Trungpa and Pema Chödrön.
Lately I've been trying to find spiritual teachings in my everyday life, in my work, with my friends, and living in San Francisco. I received a spiritual teaching or truth yesterday, I think, in the form of a blog entry from a friend of mine who's keeping a daily blog. And to put it in context, for the last week or two, I've been really upset about the healthcare issue that's going on in this country right now, and the forces that seem to be working against it. And then this week, when the Republican Party of Florida and the governor of Texas came out and said that they don't think that our children should be listening to this evil socialist ideas of President Obama, I realized I was really, really angry. And this anger just sort of filled me, and it kind of turned into hatred of these people, those people. And for a few days, I was just really feeling like consumed with this, why are all these evil people here, And I wrote an email to this friend of mine who's writing the blog, expressing how I felt. And yesterday in his blog, he actually talked about that. And he reminded me that those people are all acting out of fear, that they're afraid of change, they're afraid to lose what they perceive that they have, they're afraid of anything new. And so, it was like sort of like a great spiritual teaching for me suddenly. It was like, boom, and it sort of not erased completely, but depleted a lot these really strong feelings of hatred and anger that I had for this movement and these people, because the teaching was, to try to think of it in a more compassionate way and to try to remember that, not to dehumanize people who I disagree with. So that was my teaching this week.
I took a friend to the East Bay on BART last week. And she's kind of a Noe Valley yuppie, and I'm not sure she'd ever taken BART before. But she was pretty weirded out by the people on the train. And expressed that to me.
She doesn't get out much.
She doesn't get out much. Drives her own car. And
trying to 9 San Bruno.
Yeah. So I said, there's one thing that all these people have in common with you and me. Actually, there's quite a few things all these people have in common, but there's one really fundamental thing we all have in common. And I said, everybody wants to be happy. Everyone on this train wants to be happy. And she was just quiet for the rest of the ride. And at the end of the train, she said, I just sat there and looked from person to person, thinking about them wanting to be happy. And she said, we were going to a Dharma talk. And she said, I don't need to go to the Dharma talk now. BART is it. So thank you for that.
Take her on the 14 mission.
Sorry?
Take her on the 14 mission sometime.
Yeah.
Can I present a question? It just occurred to me. Relative to anger, I was thinking, because actually I was thinking of exactly the situation you were talking about, and I was thinking about how I would like to respond to it. And then I was thinking, well, the question to me is, okay, so on the one hand, anger towards other people for things that they do with us, this is not a good thing, because it more likely than not triggers us to do behavior that is not constructive, either for them or for us. Then on the other hand, this situation that you're talking about, this healthcare thing, it makes me very angry because
I really think this is like a pivotal point for America. And so I know being angry with these people is really not appropriate. But I don't know that it's inappropriate to be angry about a change that you see coming, if that is going to perhaps motivate some constructive problem solving. So I just wanted to put that out and see what other people thought. Because I'm so used to thinking, no, anger is not a good thing. You need to accept all of these things. But I don't know that in situations like this, that acceptance or denying anger as a strong emotion. I don't know very much about. I don't know enough about the Dharma, really.
Well, the Buddha taught that, one feedback is the Buddha taught that there's a difference between recognizing that something is bad and rectifying it, including war or evil in the world, and anger. You can recognize that there's a problem and work very hard to rectify it. You can be an activist, which is entirely appropriate and skillful. But the problem with anger is that the angry person is the one that suffers.
Or perhaps may not be skillful.
Well, yeah.
The anger may deprive you of...
Buddha would say anything that causes happiness is skillful, and anything that causes suffering is unskillful. So therefore anger is always unskillful. But that doesn't mean you can't rectify, you can't notice injustice and speak out against it.
Thank you.
Anybody else on that one?
My thought is that I see a very big distinction between anger and hatred. I don't think one necessarily leads to the other. I can love my dog very much and yet be angry at him at times. And when I see some social issues like the recent ones, I do become angry, and I think that helps motivate me into some sort of action. But I don't let that slip into hatred of the people that are on the other side, because I know that that's just perpetuating more ignorance and more lack of understanding. And it's easy to go there, but I draw the line there. It's a very it's a lot. I don't think that's a constructive place to go for myself or for obtaining some understanding between disparate points of views. So that's my thought.
I identify anger related to fear in myself in relation to those people. I get angry because I'm afraid, and I think what I'm afraid of is to speak up and enter into a dialogue with them. I'm afraid of confrontation, so I will go to anger and resentment instead.
I think one of the things that I learned from your blog experience, Richard, is that the line between these people and you is really not that thick. That fear is a common ground, and it draws both of you together. And that the realization is that anything that I make an object leads me to suffering. And what brings me to greater harmony is to see how much they are me.
Mm.
And then maybe I can bring what you're learning, what we're all learning, compassion, wisdom, insight into that relationship.
With that wisdom, we should tie things up in our program today. Thank you, everyone, for bringing wisdom, your own and written wisdom with you today. It's a good day. Do we have announcements?
I'm Cass. I'm your host today, so please stay and enjoy the fellowship of the Sangha. We have some refreshments, so have some tea and try the experience the complexity of peaches. And if you have some tea, please wash your cup. There's a sign-up sheet for people who want to add themselves to the mailing list. I'll come around with the Dana Bowl to help meet the expenses of the Sangha. Anything you desire to contribute, please feel free. $5 to $8 is recommended as appropriate, but let your heart guide you. And some people get together around 12:30 to go to lunch. They gather by the front door. I think that's it.
My name is Michael, and I'm the coordinator of the annual GBF retreat. This is basically your last opportunity to register. Tomorrow is the deadline. It's happening in 2 weekends, the 18th through the 20th at Vajrapani Institute. There should be registration forms out there by the Dana Bowl. Currently there are 24 people registered, so there are a few spaces left. If you have any questions, please ask.
Our speaker next week will be Carol Newhouse. It's once a year we get to a visit from her, and it's always a tremendous delight. She leads the Lesbian Buddhist Sangha over in the East Bay. It's always important to connect with her and that Sangha. So we look forward to her presence next week as our Dharma presenter.
Other announcements? Let's gather in a circle for merit. Dedication of merit. Sometimes meditation is thought of as kind of a selfish, introspective, inward-only activity. But Buddhists don't believe that. Buddhists believe that every moment we spend in meditation, in mindfulness for that matter, in our daily lives, benefits all beings. And that it's important, or at least useful, to, at the end of our meditation, whether we're alone at home or meeting in a group, to remind ourselves of that. Every time we're mindful, every time we meditate, and to dedicate the merit of our practice, the good that we have created by sitting together, to dedicate the merit of that practice to all beings. So that's what we do at the end of our sitting. We're here to dedicate the merit of our practice today, our meditation, our wisdom, our discussion, to all beings that couldn't be with us here today, to all beings that might not have been able to meditate today. To all beings we wish safety. We wish all beings to be happy, to be peaceful, to live in ease. We hope for all beings to be free.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.